Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new pregame edition of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jarrod Prugar, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, it's a showdown on South Beach. Penn State takes on Notre Dame for the first time since 2007 when they faced off in the first full stadium whiteout in Beaver Stadium history. Lots changed since then, but this is a battle between two perennial powers, two long-standing foes, and there has not been a game that they've played against each other that has been of this magnitude. Winner goes on to face Texas or Ohio State for the national championship.
Yeah, and among the things that have changed is Beaver Stadium no longer has a press box that was there for the 2007 game. Orange Bowl in Miami, South Beach, national title bid on the line. What a matchup that this 12-team playoff has produced. You have four perennial blue bloods, four national brands. I think Penn State and Texas both have student enrollments north of 40,000. Ohio State's is in the mid-50s. I don't even know what Notre Dame's is, but you have a whole sect of Christianity behind the college. Winner takes all, meaning Scranton, Pennsylvania, for this contest.
Pennsylvania in general. I mean, it's like that, not just in Eastern PA, but in Central Pennsylvania too. You're either a Penn State, Notre Dame, or Pitt fan, and you're typically not a Pitt fan.
Yeah, because who is? But just the magnitude of it, and I'm going to be there. You're going to be there covering the game for NSN. I'm going to be there as a fan, and just the magnitude of this game it had me like. I didn't even bother going to the Fiesta Bowl, right? We've talked about like the costs and everything of fans having to pick and choose of what games they're going to go to, what they're not. The potential matchup of the Orange Bowl. Sure, the logistics to get to Fort Lauderdale, Miami Gardens, Florida is a lot easier than getting all the way out to Scottsdale, Arizona. But
especially if you fly Spirit.
Yeah, the big yellow school bus in the sky. But
wait. While you say Spirit. So Kevin and I are traveling together. I'm flying down, or I'm driving to Richmond. We're flying out of Richmond and going to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. When we have been talking about these plans for a couple of weeks now. Kevin and I were discussing flight plans. We wanted to be on the same flight, make sure we're at least close together. We pretend like we like each other. And Kevin sends me a screenshot of the flight, and it's like $455. And my dog, like, no, like, I'm gonna have to walk, dude. And then he's like, "Oh shit, Spirit,
wrong airline, wrong airport." Right. Actually, don't go to Miami Airport. Go to Fort Lauderdale Airport.
Right. We are doing a round trip for about $80 total. 75, I think, is the grand total there. But yeah, Kevin had me going. It was almost I was nearly walking to Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, and it's a bonsai trip too. We're going to be taking off from Richmond. Obviously, we're going to be gone for a grand total from Richmond for about 26 hours and 15 minutes per the flight plan. So real bonsai trip. But I mean, that's what this playoff does. Like Penn State has finally made the Final Four in football. Previous years, obviously, it's only been the Final Four. Just the 4-team playoff. Now there's 12. Penn State still makes it regardless. What irony there. And now they get to go play. I don't want to call it a rival. They've only played 19 times.
This would be the 20th. This would be the 20th matchup between the two programs. It was historically in the 80s, they faced off every year in the 1980s up until 1992. Is the last time that they faced each other prior to the 2006 and 7 home and homes.
Yeah, so 81 to 92, big long rivalry there, but it's gone stale. It's kind of like West Virginia. It's kind of like Pitt. Like Penn State just doesn't go there, especially based off the Big Ten schedule, having to play the 9 conference games that we've talked out ad nauseum. So to get these matchup of two national brands, two national powerhouses, two programs with a lot to prove. There is a lot on the line. Notre Dame has made the 4-team playoff before and just got steamrolled. Penn State was always, I don't want to say snubbed. They were snubbed one time from the 4-team playoff, never quite able to make it in the other 9 editions of that. And now those two programs have finally made the Final Four again. national semifinal games. They're facing each other. The first African-American coach to coach in a national championship game is guaranteed now in the matchup between Marcus Freeman and James Franklin. So there's a lot on the line, both historically for African-American coaches in college football, but also just college football in general, because it's the title game of the first 12-team playoff is on the line. And you could not handpick 4 better programs that are not named Georgia and Alabama to be in this national semifinal round.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing. You kind of figure out what you're looking for in a matchup. And this is an old school matchup. I think it's going to be a lot. We're going to talk about the game in the second segment, but I think it's going to be a throwback type game. Physicality is going to be an extreme. And again, nothing has ever happened between these two teams. Yes, there have been playoff games like this before, obviously every year, but the magnitude of this one is just far superior than any other game these two teams have played against each other. Both teams won national titles in the 80s. Obviously Notre Dame's is more recent in 88. A lot of people argue 94 for Penn State, obviously, with that team. This isn't the early 1900s where teams just claim national championships left and right. But there's a lot to prove. There are a lot of narratives to break. And I think that's the one thing, too. James Franklin, right? Big Game James. This is the biggest of them all. But I don't know that this type of game warrants Big Game James type vibes, right? This is a big game. But if this game is a close one, I think we can throw those games out the window, because this is a toss-up to me. I think the line is at 1.5, 2 points. Penn State is the underdog. And, of course, the tale as old as time, James Franklin is an underdog. This is a game that obviously Penn State wants to win, needs to win, but so does Notre Dame. For me, the narrative goes away should this game be a close one, and I fully expect it to be a close one.
Yeah, I think it is too. And the Big Game James vibe is going to become – if Penn State gets down. I'm not sure Notre Dame's built to come from behind. They've not played from behind all season long. I think they're the leader in FBS in games led in the number of time, and obviously they never trailed against NIU, except with the exception of when they lost on the last second field goal.
They're second. They're second to Ole Miss.
My mistake. Still. 1 or 2 out of 134 teams or whatever's in FBS. They have played from the lead all season long. And yeah, it's going to be a matchup. And I think it is 100% a toss up.
But yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing, again, it's for all the marbles, right? Or for the next bag of marbles, I guess I should say, to get to the next bag. And you've got two coaches that are out to prove something. Obviously James Franklin's been at Penn State for a long time. Marcus Freeman's been at Notre Dame for 3 years now. Took over for Brian Kelly, who said that Notre Dame couldn't win the big one. And Brian Kelly's teams got smoked when it mattered the most. And it's funny because Marcus Freeman's a very likable guy, and James Franklin I think has worn on some people as well. But for Penn State and Notre Dame, and football fans everywhere, this is the type of game that you want to see as a national championship, let alone a semifinal. To face Texas or Ohio State in the Quinn Ewers Cup, it's just one of those situations where now, Thursday night, 7:30, the lights are going to be on in South Beach. Who's ready to answer that bell?
And I think the thing that protects the Big Game James mantra is this game hasn't been scheduled for years. Sure, the 1-0 mantra is there, but Ohio State's always looming on the schedule. Michigan is always looming on the schedule. You're not like somewhat looking forward. You're not devoting resources. Everything that you've done all season long hasn't been with setting plays up to take advantage of Ohio State in week 8, 9, whatever when they played it. Now it's, Notre Dame is our next opponent. We found that out 7 days ago. Let's go build a game plan on them. They've obviously been studying film since the matchup was when the bowl games were set. Obviously they're starting to look ahead. Once they make it to the Fiesta Bowl, they're looking at Georgia, Notre Dame. The scouting staff is so, but it's just become nothing they've done all season long has been in preparation of Notre Dame, right? It's just been to get to this next step. Now you have your opponent set. And honestly, we're probably going to talk about this next. I think this game sets up a lot like the Boise State game.
100%. And that's a perfect segue as we go into the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast after this break on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, you mentioned it. This is going to be a lot like Boise State, I think. It's going to be a physical battle between the two offensive and defensive fronts on both sides. Penn State's offensive line is playing some really good football. They've played a lot of 12 personnel since losing to Ohio State, the double tights there, with Luke Reynolds and Khalil Dinkins getting some time alongside Tyler Warren. And that's helped spring the run game. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen have played some inspired football lately. Both are over 1,000 yards as rushers. And to me, they're playing some really good – they're playing their best football at this time. That's exactly what you want. Wins in August and September are great, but those wins in November and December and now January are ultimately the most important. Penn State had their setback against Ohio State, certainly. But now that is in the rearview mirror. You can only learn from that. You can't run from it anymore. It happened. Now it's all about Notre Dame. Can they perform up to the level that the Notre Dame is? And it's the same thing for Notre Dame. It's really, can you perform on the highest stage, right? You've done everything that you've needed to do. Notre Dame had to beat Indiana. They had to go on the road, essentially, in Louisiana, battle a terrorist attack, games moved, and beat Georgia. Then you've got to beat Penn State. Penn State beat SMU at home. They beat Boise State in Arizona. Now they're in Miami, and they've got to beat Notre Dame. And it's a very even matchup. I think both offenses are similar. Now, the Penn State offense is a lot more healthier, I think, than Notre Dame's, with Jeremiah Love being banged up, running back for Notre Dame. But these teams match up so incredibly well, and I think that's going to be a big thing for both teams.
Yeah, and I think I talked about it at the end of the first segment. Notre Dame's offense hasn't been particularly impressive. They were not impressive against Georgia. Georgia is a real defense, probably one of the first real defenses Notre Dame has played all season long. They score 20 or 17 points in 54 seconds. They get the field goal. They get the fumble, one play touchdown for 13 yards. And then to start the second half, they go kickoff return for touchdown. They've lived and died by turnovers. I think they've got 31 turnovers on the season. Penn State's only forced 24. Notre Dame's turnover margin's plus 18. A lot of fumbles, a lot of interceptions that this back end of the defense is forcing for Notre Dame. But they're down Benjamin Moore, so that's their star cornerback, really the leader back there. There are some emerging stars, but I think the game plan for Notre Dame or for Penn State's defense is sell out to stop the run again. Sell out to stop Jeremiah Love's knee is banged up. Riley Leonard threw for 90 yards against Georgia. I mean, did not have a stellar game. Really hasn't had a stellar game passing all season long. And it's one of those things. It's like last week they said, hey, Gunnar Madsen, like, go for it. Gunnar Madsen. Maddox Madsen, go for it. You want to beat us through the air? Do it. And he throws for 350 or whatever he did in the Fiesta Bowl. Ultimately, like, they made him make mistakes through the air, and Riley Leonard also likes to run. So, I mean, if you're going to be kind of hampered a little bit with Jeremiah Love's running ability, might it fall more on Riley Leonard's legs? And I think it's going to take a disciplined performance from the defensive line. As Denine Sutton was doing a lot of inside moves against Boise State, trying to get pressure on the quarterback. And if you're doing those inside moves, you're giving up the edge. It's kind of what you see every weekend for Pat Mahomes in the NFL with the Chiefs. It's if you are undisciplined in your gaps and in your lanes, you're going to let quarterbacks escape the pocket. You're going to let them extend plays. And that's where Riley Leonard thrives. If you can stop that, I think you can foil this offense, the Notre Dame offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is obviously you can't let Riley Leonard's legs beat you. Or his arm, really, for that matter. So I think you got to stay home. You got to stay gap sound. Listen, let's be real. I think Abdul Carter is playing. You don't go through all this Darth Vader stuff the back to tank, all these posts, these cryptic posts without playing, right? I mean, he's going to do anything. Again, this isn't your typical Orange Bowl. This is for the national championship to get to play for a national championship, which is every kid's goal when they step foot on their college campus is they want to win a national championship. So I don't think anything's going to keep him from playing.
I think the good thing about Abdul Carter is an upper body injury.
Right.
His explosiveness is still going to be there. His quickness off the ball, as long as that what we perceive to be a shoulder injury, as long as that shoulder is not tender to the touch and he still has some amount of strength, he's going to be able to make tackles. I mean, it might hurt to make tackles, and he might be on a 50% snap count every other drive kind of thing. Like, we're going to have to watch that. But I agree with you. Like, all these cryptic tweets and stuff, he's playing. He's just not practicing because he doesn't need to. Why take the extra hits on the shoulder? There's no need to. His legs are good. He can do bike work. He can do weight work, whatever he needs to do to keep his legs in shape, keep his heart ready. But rest that shoulder, man. Shoulders are weird. They're complex. You've had shoulder issues.
Yes.
I've had shoulder issues. Number one thing to do with a bum shoulder is don't move it. Or move it lightly, keep it loose, but don't strain it, because if you go too hard on that shoulder's not.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, right. And I think that's the biggest thing. He's going to play. That's what matters most. And it does not do a Penn State a service to come out already say, hey, well, he's not playing or he's playing. This is strategery and a little bit of gamesmanship between them and Notre Dame. Right, Penn State did not release an availability report ahead of the Fiesta Bowl. James Franklin said, if they don't have to do it, we're not going to do it either. So, and I don't blame him one bit for that. Why? You're looking for every advantage you can, no matter how small it is, at this stage of the game. But for Penn State defensively, you just got to stay disciplined. When they play disciplined football, they are one of the best defenses in the country. They have not tackled as well as they have against Boise State in quite some time. That's what they need to do yet again against Notre Dame. Just play your game and win the turnover battle. This is going to come down to the team that wins the turnover battle. I think, Gabe Nwosu is not going to let Notre Dame return many kicks. That's not going to be an issue. Georgia, I thought, got burned by that big time, with that little middle eight there. What they did there with the kickoff return and those sorts of things. So I think the biggest thing for Penn State is to minimize Notre Dame's impact on special teams, because then it's a toss up there, and then play the defense that you're going to. This game is going to be really helter skelter. I think at the beginning, I think we might either see some long drives or we might see some 3 and outs because teams are just kind of trying to figure each other out. But and there's going to be a little bit of a tension there because of what's at stake. But I think the biggest thing for Penn State is just continue playing their brand of football and control the game. And if they're able to do that, good things will happen.
Yeah, and one last thing on the defense I'm going to transition to the offense, but one last thing on the defense is Penn State's red zone defense is one of the best in the country when it comes to not allowing touchdowns. Notre Dame's offense is one of the best offenses in red zone touchdown percentage. So key metric is going to be when that ball starts getting close to the 20-25 yard line, Notre Dame puts up 6 points more times than not. Penn State more times than not does not allow 6 points. So excuse me, a key thing to look for. But you talk about offense, you talk about playing your game. The offense is going to get to play their game. Notre Dame had a very, I don't want to say easy, because you're in the Sugar Bowl. This national quarterfinal. No game is easy here. They had an easy game plan. Take the guy who's starting his first college football game, his first football game that he's starting since he was in high school in 2021. Put him under a lot of pressure, sell out to stop the run, give him no time to pass the ball, and watch him flounder like a fish. And that's exactly what he did. Drew Aller's not going to get rattled. He's played Ohio State. He's played Michigan. He's played big environments. He's played Ole Miss last year. He's gone on the road to USC. The Penn State team has faced a lot of adversity. The offense has faced a lot of adversity, a lot of stalling points, a lot of just times where it's just not working. They haven't figured out. They're trying too hard, or they're just simply not executing. I think that's the advantage here in the last 3 weeks. Excuse me. Penn State's offensive attack is predicated on running the ball, and they said right after the Oregon game, like Penn State found something with their offensive line. They found a way to become people movers. This Notre Dame front's probably the best one that they've seen this season since Ohio State. But this is after they found that thing. And I think if Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, if they have any sort of performance like what they had against Boise State, where they're averaging, let's say they come out and average 6-7 yards a carry, here we go. And then they put all that tape out there of all the deep balls. Maybe they can start building on those intermediate routes that we kind of wish that they would have done last week. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the offense as long as they don't try to get too cute, try too hard to outthink Notre Dame, trying to shy away from Notre Dame's perceived strength on defense. I think the offense could have a good day, but I think there will definitely be times of teams that are going to be trading punts.
I think so too. And I think the other thing that Penn State's offense needs to do is take a look at that film from USC Notre Dame at the end of the year. That was the last game of the regular season for Notre Dame. That was before the playoff. That was before the Sugar Bowl. You know, they're 2 pick sixes away from that game being completely different. You know, USC was in a very good position, came back late, and it made it a much closer game. And then, of course, you had the 2 pick sixes there in the fourth quarter.
100-yard pick sixes. One was like 98. Right. One was more than 100 yards. So USC was threatening to score and take the lead.
Yeah, and they ran the ball well. I mean, they had Quentin Joyner had 83 yards. Brian Jackson had 71 yards. So Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, they're not. Jaden Mave was 27 of 49 for 360. Now, if they're in a situation where Drew Aller is throwing the ball 49 times, I don't think that's a great situation. But he also had 3 touchdowns. You know, I think that's the thing. You know, you got to get Tyler Warren involved early, but you can't force it to him. And you got to get Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton in positions to succeed as well. And I think if you're able to do that, then you're going to be in a really good situation to win the football game. And if they're able to play their style of football offensively, running the football, winning that battle up front, really neutralizing the pass rush of the Notre Dame defense, this could be a win for Penn State.
Yeah, and like you can get Nick Singleton outside on swing passes. Like if the run game's not working, you can get his speed. You can get him in motions. Omari Evans, fast. Notre Dame loves to play man coverage. You put Omari Evans in motion, and you get a cornerback or whatever defensive back is covering him on that play. You give him 2 or 3 steps advantage. Omari Evans can get around the edge on that. He can get deep. And against a high man coverage team, I really like the Omari Evans matchup.
I'm very glad you mentioned the motion because I think that's the key here. Andy Kotelnicki is so good at the window dressing. Give us a salad full of it. Give us all the window dressing for Notre Dame because as a man team, you're dealing with pre-snap motions. You got people going back and forth, what have you. That creates confusion. That creates befuddlement, and that's where you take advantage of teams. And that's really what teams have done well against them. Georgia, I thought, did okay to doing it. USC did it. Make sure you do that. Get them uncomfortable and get them playing from behind and see what Riley Leonard can do. And Penn State started hot against Boise State. And Penn State's not a team that's known for starting hot ever in James Franklin's tenure. But against SMU, they started hot. And they started hot also against Boise State. Can they do that again? And that'll be a good indication of how that game could end up for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think the fast start is the key because if Notre Dame gets to do what they want on offense, Notre Dame has shown that they can be successful. It's can you get Notre Dame in a position where they've not been before?
And Notre Dame's not afraid to run the clock. They're not afraid to ground and pound it out. And I think that's, one of those situations now for Penn State. Don't let Notre Dame dictate the play of the game. Don't let them get comfortable and see what happens for the Fighting Irish. And I think that's what makes this game such an intriguing matchup. Again, Notre Dame is 11-1. They've won their 2 games in the playoff. You know, they beat Indiana, they beat Georgia, right? They beat Texas A&M. They got beat late by Northern Illinois. They throttled Purdue and Miami of Ohio, and they had played this independent schedule. They played 2 service academy teams. And can they go out? And what's crazy, though, is as the teams, they've scored 28 or more points outside of every game except for Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio. This is where they scored 28, and Texas A&M beginning of the season. The last 2 games, they've scored 23 and 27, Georgia and Indiana respectively. But they're giving up some points, and a lot of those, in the Georgia game, are thanks in large parts to special teams. So what is the Notre Dame offense going to be able to do against the Penn State defense?
Yeah, and of those 23 points, really 14 of them are from defense and special teams. So I think this team is gettable. I think Penn State's probably the strongest team they're going to play this season so far, just because Georgia didn't have Carson Beck, just because Georgia's receivers put on bricks instead of receiver gloves last Thursday afternoon. So I think Penn State can pose some challenges, and I think this is a game this is a legacy game for James Franklin. If you go on and win this, I don't want to say that's season complete, but it's a damn good season.
It gets that monkey off the back for sure. But we're going to talk about what we think is going to happen when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Let's get right to it. Let's talk Orange Bowl. What's your prediction for the game, Kevin?
Let's just talk Vegas first. I was really surprised Notre Dame was a 1.5 point favorite to open this game. I thought Penn State 2, maybe 3 point favorite to start, and then we'd see how the line moved. I was very surprised to see that Notre Dame was a 1.5 point favorite across the board. I think it's kind of a fake spread. I threw $25 on Penn State money line at Notre Dame 1.5. I believe so strongly that Penn State is going to win that I don't even care what the spread is. James Franklin is 3-7 against as an underdog in his last 10 attempts as an underdog in football games, but I think this is a different underdog game. There's so much more to play for. The situation is totally different, and I really don't think that they are underdogs in this game. Weather will be 66 degrees and sunny, changing into a 51-degree evening. Winds 10 to 15 miles an hour during the day, calming down to a 5 to 10 mile an hour during the game. So good amount of breeze. Really not something that's going to impact the game. So Penn State's going to win. I have the score at 24. Over under is 44.5. I have Penn State winning 24-21, which would be an over.
I have, did you say 24-21?
I did.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So that's great. And I feel the same way. I think Penn State does its job. It's so tough because I think this is more of a pick'em game. It's a toss-up, point flip, whatever you want to call it, because the games of this magnitude just don't happen often. I mean, it's easy for Penn State to be an underdog against Ohio State at Beaver Stadium early in the season because we know what's going to happen there, right? And it's tough to evaluate a team like Notre Dame because they not necessarily throttled Georgia, but didn't really need to throttle them. They just beat them. Same thing with Indiana. They demolished Indiana really, really well, and then at the end, it's tough. So it's tough to evaluate because that it's just kind of where we're at. But for Penn State, if they can continue to play the way that they played offensively, clean it up, get some, maybe not fall in love with the deep ball, but again, the way that I view the Boise State game is that they didn't need to press things. They got a little too cute. They knew they were going to win from an early time. They were just kind of holding on. But it's just one of those situations where now it's all or nothing because you win and you live to play one more game, and that's what you need. But if you lose, ultimately your season's over.
Yeah, and I think I think the line comes from, you look at the common opponents, Notre Dame 66-7 over Purdue. Penn State only puts up 49-10, but like Penn State really didn't play starters in the second half at all. And then you look at the USC game, Notre Dame wins by 14. Penn State needs 2 OTs on the road in Pasadena. But again, Notre Dame profited a lot. They got their 14-point margin by 14 points off defensive turnovers, defensive touchdowns. To me, like that's the same game as Penn State beating USC in double OT like they did. So, yeah, I think it's pick 'em, but I do like Penn State by 3. It's going to be nitty gritty. It's going to be tight. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be fun to watch.
Now, we also said this again about, we thought it was going to be closer for Oregon, and it turned out to be a slugfest. So who knows what's going to happen. But I do think that this is going to be just a physical matchup. And I think that's what I love most about this. While I expect Ohio State and Texas to be a shootout.
I agree. Who do you have in that game?
I can't bet against Ohio State right now because the way they're playing. I mean, they came out and they just absolutely just demolished Oregon. And I really don't like the way the Texas's offense has played. And that's kind of the way the Penn State is right now. Penn State is obviously one of the 4 teams left, but they have an actual chance, unlike any time that we've seen in our lifetime, right? Now, for me, I was around for 94, but that's not like I remember watching it when I was in diapers, right? So, but that Penn State has a legitimate shot at a national championship. Legitimate, bona fide chance, because they are among the 4 that are left, but they also have what I think is the best defense left. And their offense is up there as well amongst these 4 teams. But for me, Ohio State is going to win. I think I have Ohio State winning, and it's going to be a 45-38 type game.
All right, so your Ohio State's -5, favored by 5. I think Texas does have a significant home field advantage. Dallas and Austin, I think, is like a 3-hour drive.
However, it is supposed to snow 2 to 6 inches in the Dallas metro area. Arlington, Virginia. Remember, this is in Arlington. Not Arlington, Virginia, but Arlington, Texas.
They got to open the roof to let it snow inside Jerry World, or
no? But this is definitely going to be the most meaningful game there this year.
So I do think it's Ohio State. I think Ohio State's probably I think Ohio State is the most dangerous team left of the 4. -5 feels like an insult.
It really does.
It feels like an insult. Texas toys with Arizona State, really struggled with them, had to go to OT. Offense kind of stalled out there. I think Ohio State's defense is probably the fiercest Texas has played this season. I mean, they've played Georgia. They only put up 15 points against Georgia the first time, only put up 19 points the second time. So I would say Ohio State's defense is definitely stronger than Georgia's. I think they are going to struggle to move the ball a little bit. They put up 31 points against Michigan. So what does that say? But that's early in the season. I just don't trust Quinn Ewers. I don't trust his ankle. I don't trust the SEC this year. Everything that the SEC has showed us this year is that the SEC is not the SEC of old. I'm not saying the SEC can't recover. The SEC has always been overrated, but this year it kind of feels that way. So I you have it was a 7-point game. I honestly think Ohio State wins this by 14 to 17 points. I'm up in,
and it's very possible. 100% possible. And I think that's the craziest thing about it all. And I think the biggest thing for me in that game is just Ohio State starting the way that they did before. But again, the biggest thing is just playing the way they did against Oregon. They came out with a fire under their ass. Jeremiah Smith was an absolute stud. 100%. If I was Jerry Jones, and I'm not, I would draft him now and be like, all right, go play for 2 more years at Ohio State, and we'll see you when you're ready, right? We'll see you get your degree, and we'll see you in a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm pumped that we'll be back and be able to watch this one on television, and we won't have to miss it. The nice thing about being only 2 games left is now this is the Friday night game. There's 24 hours to digest what just happened. Right. And everybody, like, I like the way that this has been set up, that the games are on 2 different days. You
That
get
might
to
be
watch
the
one
only
day.
positive with the schedule, because the schedule kind of sucks, right? I mean, we've talked about the logistics of everything. Like, so for me to travel to Richmond, and now that I'm doing that by choice, right? I'm trying to ball on a budget here, and you know, I'm going to Richmond Wednesday night, flying out Thursday morning, putting our lives and spirits big seats, uh, hoping for no travel issues.
We can say our Hail
But
Marys. Shout out Notre Dame.
yeah, right. I don't want to pray to touchdown Jesus just yet, but but um, but we're traveling down Thursday game, take a quick nap, get back to the airport, nice and early Friday morning, and then I'm back in Altoona mid afternoon on Friday. So it's a quick jaunt, it's a quick trip, but the good news is there's a lot of football to still be seen, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is just being able to watch those games. Now, do I wish they were on Saturday? Absolutely. I do wish that this game was a Saturday night game. You can even run the Cotton Bowl on Saturday night. That would be fine too, whatever. But that they are two different nights, it is really good, because all eyes are going to be on Penn State, Notre Dame on Thursday, and all eyes are going to be on Ohio State, Texas on Friday. And I think that's great for all four programs. All four programs are used to getting huge ratings, and that's exactly what ESPN has wanted, right? Obviously, they're in bed with the SEC through the regular season, but postseason, that doesn't much matter. Now it's their chance to get all eyes are on them, and all eyes are going to be. And I think that's what all four programs deserve at this point. They made it this far for a reason. Now, can they go out and continue their journey to winning a national championship? And that's what we're going to find out come 7:38. I would imagine is when that game will kick off on Thursday night, and when Penn State and Notre Dame fight it out between the lines.
Let's stay in a good relationship with our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Good Dog Beverage Company. Good Dog offers a variety of products, including vodka and whiskey cocktails, along with bourbon hard seltzers. Through Good Dog's Leverage the Beverage program, they donate a portion of the profits from every case sold and 100% of the merchandise sales profits to provide service dogs for people in need. You can go to gooddogbeverage.com. That's good, DOGG beverage.com to find merchandise and the closest retailer carrying Good Dog beverages to you.
Very good, Kevin. Any parting shots as you die of your cough?
No parting shots. Just want to let the people know Richmond is in a bit of a crisis mode right now. Winter storm. South doesn't handle snow very well, but ice kind of got us. The main water pumping station in Richmond has failed. They had a pump failure due to various causes there. Went to restore that pump. It failed again. So a decent portion of Richmond, along with the county that I am in, is without water. So it's a challenging time. It's an interesting time, and I'm very thankful that the college football playoff is here to distract me, because I don't have water for, I think, at least another 24 hours minimum. And then I'm under a 48-hour boiling water advisory as well. So tough scenes in Richmond, but yeah, we'll make it back.
Good. That's all that matters. For Kevin Quigley, this has been Jarrod Prugar. We will catch you again post-game from the Orange Bowl, live from Miami after the game, win or lose. We'll catch you again later this week. For Kevin, this has been Jarrod on the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network.